South Africa's Cape Town's been hailed as the Saint-Tropez of Africa, with its beaches, gracious living for some, and million-dollar mansions. But behind the sun, the sea, the Rainbow Nation, goodness, the preparations for the World Cup as well, you know, the urban barren badlands, as they're called, of Cape Flats, lies South Africa's worst drug crisis. The terrible cost of crystal meth, or locally known as teak, has been described as South Africa's most serious drug epidemic. Today we focus on the story of a desperate mother who murdered her own son, who had become a violent drug addict. Joining me from Cape Town's our correspondent, Heidi Fitzpatrick. This story almost more shocking than fiction. What would drive a mother to murder her own grown child, Heidi?
Well, Mark, you've got to look at it in context first. Wherever you go in poor neighborhoods all over the world, people are out of work, they've lost hope, and so they turn to drugs and alcohol. In Cape Town, this drug called tick is so strong that it drastically changes the behavior of children. I must just tell you, it's called tick because of the clicking sound that it makes when one smokes it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that again. But this drug makes teenagers so violent that their mothers, they're thinking of killing their own children. And we met one mother who didn't just think about killing, she actually went ahead and did it. And you ask what would drive a mother to do something like that? Well, the mothers in these homes on the Cape Flats say that their homes, their communities have become kill or be killed situations. This drug makes kids so violent that it makes everyday life a question of survival for them. And the woman we're about to meet, Ellen Pakkies, she was so frightened of her own son that she overcame her motherly instincts and strangled her son. And authorities understood her predicament, and she didn't end up going to jail. Let's take a look at Ellen Pakkies' story.
Ellen Pakkies prefers to remember her son Adam as a young boy, full of life and loved by everyone, not the aggressive 20-year-old she strangled to death.
He was very spontaneous and helpful and kind. And yeah, that's how I remember him before he started using drugs. The worst for me was the everyday abuse. So, where there was times that I couldn't sleep, and there was times that I was woken up in the morning, 4 o'clock, to go to work because all my windows were broken, and he then threw water in my face through the window, and I couldn't sleep.
Adam was addicted to tick, street slang for crystal methamphetamine. Ellen says the drug turned him into a monster who stole from her and stabbed her. One morning, Ellen snapped. She went to the backyard shack where her son slept, tied a rope around his neck, and ended his life.
I was hesitating with what I was going to do, but I was just, like I said, maybe I just put my courage together or whatever, I don't know. And then I just tightened the rope around the end of the bed here. And he was just like sleeping. And then I just said, Father, forgive me for what I did. And then it's when I left the room.
The court sympathized with Ellen Pakkies and sentenced her to community service instead of prison. Police say tick is easy to make.
But they would actually take the amphetamine, put it in here, in the lolly, and then they would light it up, and that would actually create the vapor, and they would smoke it out through the back. Makes them aggressive. They are not interested in their schoolwork anymore. They're not interested in sleeping anymore. They're not even interested in eating anymore.
On the streets, tick costs less than €1 per hit, and demand is high. Here, a drug deal takes place in plain sight in a matter of seconds. Ellen now counsels other women who are just as terrified of their children as she was.
I feel it with you, because one Saturday I wanted to stab him to death, because I couldn't take it anymore. He left me not even one knife to cut my onions, and I had this plastic fork. I wanted to cut the onion, and he stood and laughed at me, and I stabbed him on the head with it. He had to go to hospital.
It will take more than community meetings to end the scourge of tick. But Ellen Pakkies says having someone that mothers can talk to eases the tension so they don't kill their children too.
Totally harrowing story there. Let's go back to Heidi Fitzpatrick, who's in Cape Town. Heidi, tell us more about what this drug does and why is the Western Cape so badly hit by it?
Drug and alcohol abuse has been on the Cape Flats for a very, very long time. It's one of the vestiges of apartheid. And you must remember that neighborhoods were ripped up and people were forcibly moved from the towns and cities where they worked and lived and crammed onto an area called the Cape Flats because the land was literally flat. And they lived under terrible social conditions. There was high poverty, high unemployment rates, and education was poor. And people were essentially made to believe that they were worthless. And this became a great breeding ground for substance abuse. Looking back further, you must remember many mixed-race people used to work on the Cape's wine and fruit farms, where farmers paid them according to what was called a dop system, dop being Afrikaans slang for alcohol. In other words, they were paid in alcohol. And so there's this history of alcohol addiction, of substance abuse that has lasted for generations. And whenever you find drunk people in one area, and people are high when they are drunk, and they have an argument, fighting ensues. And I grew up on the Cape Flats and I saw this regularly on a Saturday afternoon. There's nothing else to do. People are drunk, people are high. There are all these interpersonal conflicts, and in many times it ends up in murder. And so TIC has always actually been around. It's better known in other parts of the world as crystal methamphetamine, as you said. And police here told me that, they also call it Hitler's drug because the Nazis supposedly used crystal methamphetamine to help soldiers stay awake, to make them more aggressive and to sort of suppress their appetite. And that's exactly what TIC does to teenagers. Mothers are always referring to the uncontrollable rage of their children. What is so shocking is that this drug is being made available by dissolving cold medicine with household chemicals such as rat poison, drain cleaner, and in many cases antifreeze, and that is why it is so cheap. But Mark, it's very important to remember that this drug is not just a problem in the poor neighborhoods on the Cape Flats. It's also a problem in affluent areas because this drug is readily available in the 20 nightclubs in Cape Town. The difference is rich kids have access to this drug in its purest form, so they buy the more pure methamphetamine at a higher price. When they get addicted, their mothers and fathers send them to rehab. Poor kids buy this drug on the streets. They buy the cheaper, more poisonous version, and their parents unfortunately end up sending them to the morgue.
Heidi, where does this drug come from? Who's making the money out of it?
Police suspect this drug is being circulated by Chinese and Nigerian syndicates. And there have been numerous busts, especially in the capital, Pretoria, and in the South Africa's largest city, Johannesburg. The problem, police say, is this drug is so easy to make, and you can practically make it in your kitchen using everyday chemicals, like I said, drain cleaner, rat poison. So it's pretty hard to clamp down on this drug when people are literally making it in their kitchens. And as you may have seen from that package, the drug deals take place so subtly that it's very hard to pick it up. And even when we were in this area, we had to look long and hard and really focus on these guys standing on a corner to see what they're actually up to, because they pretend to be playing a game and you can't really figure out what they're doing. Only upon closer inspection, we found out they were actually dealing in drugs. So in a way, very hard for police to sort of clamp down on the streets. But I must tell you, I think authorities woke up too late to this drug. By the time the first drug bust was made in Pretoria in 2001, this drug had already been spread on the Cape Flats and was already beginning to ravage the poor communities.
Heidi Fitzpatrick, thank you very much for that additional information regarding your story. Disturbing stuff there from Cape Town of the effects of crystal meth on that community. That brings this slice of world news to an end. Do stay with us here on France 24.